for the state with regard to Medicaid cost report audits. So obviously the industry's changed a lot since then, but that's how we kind of got to start in working with long-term care clients back at that time. A little bit of information up on the screen about who IntelliTech is. We work closely with Microsoft in the long-term care space. We work with Microsoft Public Sector, and Microsoft helps us with all of the delivery and marketing in the long-term care space with their Dynamics products. Our consultants, in addition to myself, we have lots of consultants that have experience in this industry. So when we work with long-term care clients, our consultants understand what an assisted living facility is, what a continuing care retirement community is. We understand the types of patient-centric services that you offer to your residents and patients, and how that needs to tie back to the different reporting, whether it be Medicare, Medicaid cost reporting, or the financial statements that you present to the board, or how that information might need to get pushed down to the department heads throughout the organization. This is a screenshot of just some of the clients that we've helped throughout the year. And so let's talk a little about Dynamics GP. Well, Dynamics GP is actually a Microsoft product as part of the Microsoft family of accounting systems. And this solution is applicable to whether you're a single site facility or a multi-site facility. We've worked with groups that are upwards to 30 or 40 entities, and we've worked, what our consultants are able to do is we're able to interact with the accounting staff and the IT staff and make sure that we get a solution that is implemented across all of the different areas throughout the organization. Our clients, to the extent that they want to be self-sufficient, our implementations are structured in a way that we transition as much knowledge as possible during the implementation so that your folks can be as self-sufficient as possible. The end result is that our clients are looking for a solution where some specific things are just push button. So today, as we look at Dynamics GP, we'll see how we've helped both single and multi-company long-term care organizations become more effective, helping them to solve the following business challenges. So there's financial and non-financial reporting needs. There are budgeting, integration, procurement, and fixed asset needs as well. And so hopefully as we go through this presentation today, you'll have a better understanding of the type of work product that we deliver for our long-term care clients that results in their success. So with that, we're going to start looking at, we're going to begin with the end in mind. We're going to start with financial reporting, and so our clients require flexible reporting to meet a variety of their reporting needs. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides that's going to show you some examples of the types of financial reports that were actually delivered in real implementations. And so these may be representative of some of the reports that you have. But typically there's going to be some type of P&L or statement of operations or statement of activities. Just really depends on what your organization calls it. And this could be for a single site or a multi-entity site, as you can see depicted here. There may be some type of cash flow, and again, what you can see in this screenshot is a consolidated cash flow for multiple entities, but this report could be rendered for an individual entity as well. We also often hear that our clients want to measure themselves against the industry averages, so they want to look at some different ratios. So and in addition, there's other types of reports that aren't in a financial nature, such as your different Medicare or Medicaid cost reporting, your specific state Medicaid reporting. You need some way to easily create the 990 report, whether it's for an individual entity or a consolidated 990. And other examples, as you can see depicted here. So the end users and their reports will vary, and what we try to do is we try to match early in the implementation what is it that your organization requires from a reporting standpoint, and we make that a specific focus during our implementation. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to transition into an actual look at the actual product. that might be used to render the financial reports. So the reports that an end user may consume could be excuse me here, I started in the wrong spot here. When an end user consumes a report, that report could be emailed to them. They may go to an intranet site and consume that on a web browser. And so what I have here is I have some examples here of a report that, as you can see, when I click on that, it's opening up in a web browser. And because financial information can be sensitive, then when an individual looks at that information, the system will actually check to make sure that their security is, that they have permission to this report, so that this really controls the access to who can see the types of reports or the detail within the report itself. And we're going to start with the operating statement here. And what you can see from this report here is that you can put your logo on here. This is a very straightforward month-to-date, year-to-date example, and it's a budget versus actual. And all of the report, and this is a consolidated report as well, and you can see here that I have many facilities on the left-hand side. And what our report writers allow us to do, or what the reports allow us to do, is allows us to drill into that information and drill down into the information that supports the transactional details that supports each of these lines. And so if we're drilling into expenses, we'll be able to, your end users will be able to self-service and see which vendors or invoices make up the information that is included in these reports. And as I'd mentioned, this is a consolidated report, so if an organization or if a person has the right permissions, they could click on a particular facility. You'll notice that the facility name was then put into the title, and now the report is updated with just that particular facility's names. I'm going to close that report down and go to another example. Our financial statement report writers are very flexible and also allow us to create very similar types of reports. So this is an expense report for a particular CCRC. And we can see the expenses across all of the different departments, but then what you'll see on the left-hand side here is that there's actually a separate report for each department. And so we can easily issue an housekeeping P&L or an operations P&L or a nursing P&L. And again, depending on who you are within the organization, the report recognizes who you are and only presents that data to you. But it allows us to easily create and maintain these reports, and so the whole administration of the reporting becomes very efficient from an accounting standpoint. The next report we'll look at is very similar to the first two, except that in this presentation, this is more of a consolidating report for a multi-entity organization. So what you see here is you can still see the consolidated amounts on the right-hand side. If there are elimination entries that need to be made, those can be presented to the end users as well. And you can see each of the facilities presented comparatively against the other organizations. We'll look at an example of a revenue report here. And so here we're looking at detailed information, again, from a consolidated viewpoint. And if we wanted to see the individual entity, we could click on the individual entity and the report would immediately refresh with that particular entity's revenue production for that period of time. What you'll also notice is that our report writer provides the information graphically as well. I'll make that a little bit better, because sometimes consuming that information makes a lot more sense graphically. We also have the ability to easily export all of the reports that we've looked at so far into Excel. And so when we start thinking about how users in organizations consume information, it's great that they have a starting point to access these types of reports from a web browser, but then they may want to do further analysis to that information so they can easily export that information to Excel. Conversely, they may want to email that to someone else within their organization, perhaps to ask a follow-up question or to respond to a comment. So that is just an example of some information from a financial reporting standpoint that our solutions can deliver and that organizations are asking us to help them get to seamlessly. They want it to be, again, they want it to be push button. They want it to be rendered in a web browser. But what I want to do is just kind of also look at some other examples here. So I am dragging an example of a financial report where we're merging statistical information with the financial information so that we can see how our organization stacks up against either an industry standard or other SNFs within facilities within our organization. So what you can see here is that we're tracking the census information for a particular period of time for a series of entities, and then coming up with the average costs or the average revenue per facility based upon that census information. And again, this information, because of our ability to integrate with other clinical packages, we can easily integrate this information and make these reports push button as well. So now that we've spent a little bit of time looking at the end result of the financial reports, I'm just going to go into the actual tool itself just to kind of give you a brief overview of what the financial report writer itself looks like. So this is actually the tool that Microsoft uses to render the reports that we just looked at, and this is called Management Reporter. It basically sits on top of the Dynamics GP data and allows you to control security to the different parts of the report. And so what you'll see here is we have different reports, a combination of all our reports, and each report is comprised of a row, column, or a tree. We can publish more than one report at a time by setting up these things called a report group, and this makes it very efficient to publish all of the reports for an entity at one time when that financial information is ready. And also, we can work with an organization to understand how often that information should be published. And so, as an example, some organizations require some reports to be published daily, others weekly, but for the most part, most of them just want it to be done monthly. And then security allows us to control through Active Directory, the types of reports and the specific parts of the reports that different users within the organization should be able to have. I'll actually open up one of the report definitions here so that you can see how it's kind of laid out. And so from a report generation standpoint, this controls how much detail a user can see when you go to drill down into the report. So I happen to have it set to the maximum amount of detail down to the transactional level. We could do what-if scenarios because we can also have the report render for unposted activity. We can control which month and year the report is generated for. And we can control where the report is generated to, and we can also control other things. To quickly get a quick understanding of how easy it is to modify these reports, these are some of the row formats here, and you can see that the presentation here is similar to Excel in that we have numbers down the side and some information across the top. And essentially what you'll see here is that you can control the descriptions that actually appear on the reports, and it's not, you can also consolidate or roll up a lot of information about an account number. So here we're just actually saying this particular department and natural account is linked to this row, versus we could do something a little bit more detailed where we're assembling all of these account numbers here onto this particular line for the purchase materials. We also have the ability to set up what are called account sets, and this allows us to assign a range of accounts, and you can see that range of accounts here, to a value set, and then I can use that dimension set throughout all of my reports. And if I ever have to update that dimension set, then all of my reports that this dimension set is linked to would be updated automatically. So we have a very sophisticated way to create the reports, but it's also very easy to use. And most of our end users are able to link their reports to row descriptions like these, or create their own row descriptions and easily link them. And we typically do that together in about 2 to 4 hours of training. As far as the different column layouts that I had shown, I'm just going to go over to the Consolidated Report where we showed the different report with each entity represented in a column layout. What you'll notice here is that we are just simply defining the column. And if I click down here, I can see that this is Facility 1 versus this is Facility 4, and so on and so on. And so by assigning this column to the same row format as that was in the other report, it then breaks that report down by facility and makes it very easy for an organization to get very detailed reports, comparative reports out for their organization. So that's a little bit about Management Reporter, and obviously we could cover more about that. But what I want to do is actually talk a little bit about the importance of non-financial reports in addition to the financial reports. So what our clients are telling us is they need an easy way to access not only financial data but non-financial data. And so examples of non-financial data would be things like the trial balance, the detailed trial balance, accounts payable aging report, the procurement or the purchasing report, maybe the requisitioning report, the fixed assets report. And Dynamics GP comes with a bunch of predefined reports. And these are very intuitive reports. And so this is an example of the summary trial balance. And so an end user, if they're given permission, then perhaps it's a shortcut that they go to or a favorite on within Internet Explorer, they simply need to go down and populate these drop downs, such as what year do they want to choose, if they have access to one or more facilities, what facility or department do they want to have the trial balance present to, and they can select the information from the drop downs, and then they're just going to click on View the Report. And again, what's significant about this is that these reports, again, are accessed through a web browser, and so an organization that wants to push that reporting out, that consumption of the reports out to their end users, can do so without having to teach or create a login for the accounting system itself. So in prior systems, reports like these used to be rendered through the application itself. There is an application, Dynamics GP, and we're going to take a look at that in a few moments, but from a reporting standpoint, we really want the end users to be able to access that information and consume that information and make decisions upon that information. Self-service, if you will, for those organizations that are ready to do that. This tool also has the ability to export the information to Excel or other types of formats because, again, that person may want to look at that information in that manner. Other examples of a report that may be started in a browser is this report here. So this is an example of a PA cost report, and what you have on the left-hand side here are the line numbers of that particular report, at least as those line numbers were described for 2010. And so when a user ran their SSRS report, this report was created automatically for them, and this allowed them to, it actually does a few things. If I could maximize this here. So I'm going to do the Medicaid instead. So these are the line items for the Maryland Medicaid cost report. And so it allows them to make sure that that the right account numbers are being assigned to that line item, and they can see all of the different details that are being rolled up and accumulated into that particular line item. And this shortened their process to create or to produce the reports necessary to finish the Medicaid cost reports. And so now what you have is you have a system that's dynamically and automatically updating this information rather than an end user having to maybe go through some kind of export process and tag those lines from their trial balance individually. So we talked a little bit about the reports being accessed through a web browser, but you also saw an example of how the reports could be accessed through Excel itself. So here's an example of the data actually being accessed directly in Excel. So during the month, every time this report could be saved on somebody's desktop, or it could be saved on the network, or it could be saved on a SharePoint site. And if I'm a user with the appropriate permissions, every time I open it, it's going to roll up and report on in a summarized way the results of my operations, either on an individual entity or on a multiple entity. And what's nice about these reports is, as I mentioned, they're persistently connected to the data. So as soon as something is posted to the data, these reports, if you hit the data refresh, these reports will be updated. And then these reports also support the drill down capability. So you'll notice that I just drilled down onto the summary line, and I'm drilling down, and I can see the details. Continue to further drill down into the report and get the transactional details that make these up. So these are, again, a very powerful way to be able to easily report on and see what key parts of the business that are happening for the organization. And so Microsoft Dynamics GP comes with about 80 predefined reports that are already linked to the data in this manner. And again, it's a great way for a small facility or a large organization to kind of quickly get at their data and see how their organization is doing without having to go into the application and run those reports. So we spent a lot of time talking about the different financial and non-financial reports, and we'll just spend a little bit of time talking about some of the key things that really are the underpinnings of the success for those reports and the publishing that to the end users. And so we have a Microsoft Dynamics GP has a very strong infrastructure. It's very flexible. The chart of accounts is very important to the structure and setup of the application. So in the example we've been looking at today, we have a 4-segment, 12-character, 12-character GL account, which is represented by the facility, department, the natural account, and level of care. And what we're finding is that when we're working with organizations, we're always getting into a conversation with them with regard to what their current chart of account structure does for them, or maybe what it doesn't do for them. And we talk about our experiences and how we've helped other organizations move to perhaps an improved version of the chart of accounts, because the industry's changed over the years, and we've had to, the CCRCs have had to come up with new revenue streams, and there's new things that needed to be added to the chart of accounts to try to accommodate that. And how do we get that all integrated properly so that the reporting can be done in an automated way? So typically we'll show them something like this, where we're starting with a chart of accounts, where we're showing them something like, well, this might be the main account for your R&B revenue, and there's usually some kind of contractual allowance associated with that. This might be one way to structure your accounts. And then, of course, there's usually some kind of departmental coding, and so we kind of talk to them about how we've helped organizations standardize on these areas to allow them to accommodate expansion in the future for their business. And additionally, we're going to talk to them about the different types of statistical information that they want to track with their chart of accounts. And of course, our Dynamics GP allows you to track an unlimited number of statistics. So you can see that we have the different census information. We can track pounds of laundry. Maybe we were tracking types of hours that different folks in the organization are working. And this information can be used to, in conjunction with the financial reports, to look at cost per patient day or cost per meal served or things of that nature. This information can also be used, you can see down here, we might have some kind of bond reporting or bond covenant reporting. So we need to make sure that those reports are also automatically updated and become more of a push-button routine. This is just a representation of what the account number might look like here. So again, we have the facility, the department, the natural account, and then maybe the level of care. So we're going to move on in our presentation, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the next section. So any organization that has multiple entities and there's some type of intercompany activity, they need the ability to automatically have the due to and due from entries created. And so some organizations with their current systems, what we're finding is that they have to actually make these entries manually. And so in this screenshot here, what you have, if you recall, the first segment represents the facility. If we were to post this entry, in total the entry is balanced. We have $1,000 in debits and credits, but facility 900 would be, if we ran that trial balance, that would be out of balance, versus facility 910, its trial balance would also be out of balance. And so what folks have had to do in their other systems is that they'd have to manually calculate and make the due to and due from entries. And what you'll notice is evidenced by this screenshot here is that what our system will do is it'll automatically create those due to and due from entries regardless of where the transactions originated from. So if it originates in accounts payable, if it originates in, as this one did here, or it originates in the general journal, or originates in payroll, the system will automatically figure out what the due to and due from entry should be and automatically do that. We have a variety of tools to do that, but what this screenshot kind of shows here is one way to do that, where we're basically assigning the clearing accounts and the due tos and due from accounts. We're creating a relationship between the different entities that represents the facility or the company. So having that done automatically, being able to have confidence that the trial balances are going to be maintained in total and that the system will allow you to allow it to get out of balance if the relationship isn't set up for a due to due from. Our system does that automatically. So the next area that we're going to look at is we're going to look at budgeting, and our clients tell us they need robust budgeting capabilities. And we have a simple and a complex solution to address this as part of our presentation today. But typically what we're finding is that our clients are using Excel in their budgeting process, and they want a better way or an easier way to perform that process. So we're just going to start with the simple way of doing it. And so what our clients are doing is that they usually create some kind of Excel file for distribution. They email that file to those responsible for populating the Excel spreadsheet. And when it's approved and when they receive those files back, they're going through some type of process to assemble all of that data maybe into a master budget spreadsheet and maybe linking that to their current accounting system. And what Dynamics GP does, with the simple version of the budgeting process, what Dynamics GP does is it allows a user to receive those files back and just automatically import those files into a budget within Dynamics. And so we haven't really been in Dynamics yet up to this point, so I'm going to jump into Dynamics. I'm going to give you a quick navigational overview of what it looks like, and then we'll look at the budgeting. So when a user comes into Dynamics, what they'll see is they'll see their favorite shortcuts, maybe to do inquiry, or maybe to do transaction entry. They can also have their favorite reports. They can have reminders set up for them that these are configurable, and they can be based on different thresholds within the system. And they can have one or more graphs show them how they're doing within the organization. And since Dynamics is role-based, then depending on who I am within the organization, I can assign one of the 30 out-of-the-box roles to a specific user, and then they kind of get a role-based page, home page assigned to them. And then they can configure that to their liking, and that is unique then to them from that point forward. In any event, on the left-hand side, what you'll notice is there's different financial, purchasing, HR, payroll, and inventory. And so most of our long-term care clients spend most of their time in the financial purchasing areas. And since we're talking about budgeting, we're just going to jump into that. And so what we have here is then we have a series of drop-down menus that a user can open as they need to. And what you'll see is there's an area to enter different types of transactions, or an area to do different setups, such as the chart of accounts and fixed assets in this case. And then they can do drill down inquiry and So we're going to jump into the budgeting area, and we're going to just create a budget, a new budget on the fly here, or a budget template, if you will. So what the system allows us to do, because it's an Office product, is it's tightly integrated, is we can create a new budget for 2014. And the budget does not have to be on a calendar year. It can be a fiscal year. I can assign it for a specific date range, and I can have an unlimited number of budgets in the system. And I can make it, I can get a budget suggested to me based upon historical data in the system, or I could just produce a blank budget. And additionally, since Excel has all of those sheets, I can actually have, in the same Excel budget file, I can actually have it show for the particular user all of the years of activity that I so choose by checking those different boxes. And then I can choose what types of accounts, including statistical accounts. So if I wanted to budget the census this way, I could. And I may want to do a range of accounts for a particular facility or department. So maybe I'm just creating the budget for Department 5, and I'll insert that and hit Next. And so what it'll do is it'll suggest to me all the accounts that ought to be part of that budget. And if I don't like the accounts that it suggests to me, then what I can do is I can deselect those account numbers, or if there were other accounts that it missed, I can add them on the fly. And at this point, then, it's going to allow me to update an existing budget, Excel spreadsheet, or create a new one, and it gives me a summary page of what I'm doing. The end result is going to be, I'm just going to open up Excel here because I have something already set up for our presentation. The end result is going to be something that looks like this. So we're going to have a blank budget with the information that can then be sent out to that particular department head. And in addition to the budget template that we want them to fill out, they can also see the historical information here that could be helpful to them when making their budgeting decisions for the prior year. And again, as you recall, we can see more than 1 year of information is provided for those folks. So that's one method of producing a budget. It's very simple to do. The accounting departments typically will generate those departments for each department or facility department combination and get them out to the end users. And then when they receive them back, as I'd mentioned, they can easily import those budgets from the spreadsheets when they receive them back from the department heads. For those organizations that have very sophisticated budgeting needs, perhaps they have lots and lots of spreadsheets that are linked together. Maybe they do a lot of capital budgeting, human resources budgeting, revenue type budgeting. Sometimes the maintenance of that Excel spreadsheet becomes onerous and linking all of that together, and they'd rather have something where they can build a budget model in the tool. And so Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Forecaster that works with the report writer that I had previously shown at the beginning of the presentation. And basically this allows an organization to set up all of the budgeting templates and link them to the appropriate account numbers, and then create, I guess, these input sheets for end users. And the end users don't even have to know anything about the account numbers. So that's a great way, a great way to have a tool, almost like a zero-based budgeting. But in the model that you can see here, I've kind of got a mocked up census and a census rate here. So we're, from an input sheet standpoint, an organization might put in what their anticipated or budgeted census is for a particular period of time, what their reimbursement rate might be, whether it's contractual or some other method of payer type, and then have that roll up into their summary budget for budgeting purposes. And this input entry can also be done through a web browser, and it can also go through an approval process. So you can control who can enter which type of information into the input sheets, as well as the type of workflow, the approval workflow that needs to be done. So somebody enters something and the next person wants to reject it back, they can do that. And eventually you end up with an approved budget for all of your departments and facilities, and that information will then appear on the financial reports. So again, it's a more sophisticated way to help organizations meet the challenges of budgeting. So let's talk a little about integrations, and I know that on the slide here it's talking about integration with the clinical packages, but really this is integrations from any other, I guess, best-of-breed system that our long-term care clients are using. So the clinical packages has that electronic health record. It's got all of that information that's linked to the billing, and all of that information needs to somehow come into the general ledger, or that appropriate information needs to come into the general ledger. And so we've worked with HealthMedics specifically to kind of build an integration that is real-time and allows an organization to better to be able to do things once and have that information automatically come over to the general ledger. So for example, in the HealthMedics package, you have all of your accounts receivable. So when you enter all the deposits from your different payers, that information, those deposit totals, come into Dynamics GP and update cash on a real-time basis. And it eliminates that spreadsheet that we typically see in long-term care organizations where they have a spreadsheet so they can see where their cash is, so they don't, because cash is king in those organizations. And so we're eliminating that spreadsheet, we're eliminating redundant data entry, and we're promoting visibility of what the total cash is so that the folks in the accounts payable department, when they go to pay the bills, they know exactly how much cash they have in the system at any point in time. But when we go through an implementation, there's also other types of systems that might need to be integrated. So most organizations outsource their payroll, and so that information from the outsourced payroll, whether it be Ceridian, ADP, Paychex, or some of the others, that information has to be brought over so that it's updating the GP checkbook or checkbooks if it's multiple entities. And if you have manual checks and things of that nature that are going through, or the exceptions that go through payroll, that also needs to be updated. And there's usually a discussion around the types of benefits and do we have to have a month-end accrual and things of that nature. So all of that information gets factored into the payroll and this integration discussion. The dining software, most long-term care organizations have some kind of meal planning and purchasing that's going on that's driving the menus that for the meals that are served up to the residents. And there's these prepaid meal plans, and how do we manage that, and what types of information need to be linked to the general ledger so that we're shortening there's an impact if we do it correctly on shortening the amount of time it takes to publish, to close the month and get the financials done so that we've got the right information from that particular system. And on and on. So there's all kinds of systems that a long-term care organization might have that might make sense to link. And not all organizations link all of their systems, but we want to at least have that discussion and make sure that the right information is getting brought into Dynamics GP so that you're getting the right reporting, push-button reporting out on the other end. So we're going to move on to, we're going to talk a little about procurement, requisitioning, and purchasing. And I'm not going to necessarily use Dynamics to present this, but we have more than one way to do this. And Dynamics GP comes with a simple solution that allows an organization that wants to have a kind of a paperless workflow to requisition things to base it upon some kind of dollar amount. We can have folks within the organization assigned to have kind of create a requisition and have that requisition flow through an approval process based on dollar amount. We also have advanced tools that allow us to do it based on any kind of rule that you could want. So it could be based upon the line item, such as this is a capital item, so this item has to go one way through the approval process, or maybe it hits a different department, so because it hit a different department, it has to go through another workflow. So we have ways to paperlessly requisition items and also in the moment tell the requisitioner or the approver of these items if there is budget availability for these different types of requisitions. So we're helping folks better control their requisition and approval process, and by tightening that up, they're getting better bottom lines. And they're able to manage all that in the moment since these systems are all connected and integrated. So this is an example of someone that's creating a requisition, and you can see that they have a save or submit button, and that's just basically based on who they are. and when they hit the submit button, it'll go to the next person within the organization. So the last topic that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about fixed assets. And most organizations have a fixed asset program. Some of them do it in Excel, but most of them use some kind of application. And again, there's redundant data entry here. But what we're seeing is that, organizations during the month, through accounts payable or purchase ordering, they're capturing information about their capital assets, but then they're having to rekey that. So that means they have to manually go into their general ledger, maybe they have to export that information, then they have to then rekey that information in their fixed asset system. And so what's unique about Dynamics GP is that if it's properly configured, Dynamics GP knows that a particular line item or a particular voucher that's being entered through the system is a fixed asset. And one way to do that is based upon when the general ledger fixed asset account is one of the posting accounts that voucher is assigned to. And so what that does is that queues up all of that information for the accountant. And so at the end of the week or the end of the month, the accountant can come in and open up the fixed assets, the main screen here, and if there's a drop down here, then they'll know that they have to continue to set that up. And then what they'll be able to see is that this particular asset that's queued up for them, it'll be linked back to the original voucher or purchase order number, and they'll have complete drill down capability to that, so they won't have to rekey anything. And then all they have to do is assign one of the classes or template rules that they've set up. So, and that template then will have things like the useful life, and they can modify that if they want, and depreciation method. And so for most of at least for our not-for-profit long-term care clients, straight line's usually the way to go. But for our for-profit clients, it supports the different tax books as well. But what's kind of unique also to long-term care is just needing to be able to capture, when I'm capturing that fixed asset, also be able to track it against my capital budget. And this is different than the operational budget. So typically an organization will have some kind of capital budget by department for each year, and they'll want to have a way to be able to report on that push button. And so what most organizations are doing, if they're doing it at all, is they're doing this in Excel, and it's a very manual process whereby they go back to the general ledger, they analyze what was purchased for the month, and then they populate their detailed or summary capital budgeting reports, and then that maybe goes on to the board for an explanation of why they're over or under budget on those capital budgets. And so what we've done is we've kind of created some work product with the Dynamics GP fixed asset system where these reports are being rendered through a web browser and they automatically update. So based upon some kind of capital budget and based upon the process that we define with the client on how to set up a fixed asset, these reports are populated automatically, or the underlying details are populated automatically, and then of course the report's rendered and updated in real time. And so what used to be a process that took them several hours each month to kind of finalize and tie out these reports, now these reports are automatically updated, and that becomes part of the reporting package that goes to the board. And it's probably worth mentioning that these reports have drill down capability to the transactional details as well. The last thing that I'd like to mention about fixed assets is that all of our customers, or most of them, have some kind of construction in process. So they're expanding, they're either acquiring a new facility, or they're building a new facility, or they're renovating a wing or something. So there's capital, there's purchases that have to be capitalized, but maybe we don't need the depreciation to start until that asset's placed in service. And so we're familiar with that, and when we go through the implementation of fixed assets with our clients, we're leading with that kind of an understanding and helping the folks have the right process to understand how Dynamics GP is used with CIP assets. So that really rounds out the topics today with regard to the 7 requirements that Dynamics GP can deliver for our long-term care clients. So today we spent a lot of time talking about the flexible financial reporting and the non-financial reporting, and how important it is to get that information out to decision makers, whether they be facility administrators or department heads, and getting them out to them in a web browser or an Excel report that's linked to the data. We talked about having a reliable system that's automatically going to analyze the transaction when you're posting it and automatically create the do-tos and do-froms so that that relinquishes that responsibility from the accountant themselves having to manually calculate that. And of course, that's going to automatically update all those reports. We talked about two different solutions for budgeting and how that solution is easy to manage from an accounting perspective. And that's a tool that's easy for your department heads to create their budget in. And we also talked about the different types of integrations that companies in the long-term care organizations are faced with, whether they be with a clinical package, their payroll system, their dining system, or other types of systems that they want to bring into their general ledger seamlessly and on a real-time, as on a real-time basis as possible, so that it shortens your month-end close process. We also talked about the need to go paperless and have the approval processes set up and be very flexible for how an organization needs to run, and provide important information to those in the approval process, such as what's my remaining budget for this current period or year. And we also talked about the need to have a well-integrated fixed asset system and to produce some specific types of capital budgeting reports as I go through and have those reports updated in real time as the transactions are captured. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back to Tom now, and I appreciated the opportunity today to speak on these topics for you. And I do hope that the information was valuable and informative.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, we do have a couple questions that have come in already, and again, I'll remind everybody you can type a question into the question box, and we will be answering them here. You can also use the hand raise function, and we can unmute your line if you want to ask a question verbally. As I mentioned, we do have a couple questions here. So first question is, can the operating statements include a column for cost/patient day?
Yep, I understand the question, and I think that I would have to take that question offline so we can capture that person's information. I just want to understand a little bit more.
Sure.
So, if they want the specific patient, or it's unclear to me exactly what they want, or if they want the specific room that was associated or the specific day, I'm not really sure to what level of detail that they want to go to there.
Yep. Okay. And the next question we have, what about the HealthMedics, HH, and hospice integration?
HealthMedics, we work closely with HealthMedics, and we work with Mark Welch, who's in charge of the exchange platform for any of those folks who might be on the line that are working with the HealthMedics sales execs. You've probably heard about that. So within the last 2 or 3 years, they've added that hospice. I cannot recall that we've worked with a specific organization, but I would think that the integration would work very similarly to how we've had it work for our assisted living, independent living, and skilled nursing facilities in terms of how we map the different levels of service and billing back to the general ledger for those areas. So I would think that it would work very similar to those areas.
Okay, great. And again, if anybody has any additional questions, you can feel free to type it into the question box right now, or you can use the hand raise function. We can unmute your line and you can ask your question verbally. We'll leave the line open for another moment here. Yep, okay, I see that. I will go ahead and unmute your line there, Gary. Okay, you're off mute now, Gary.
Okay. Basically, we try to gather data on the financial statements on a cost per patient day basis. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of census and cost to determine what the cost per patient day or resident day, whichever the case may be. And I want to make sure that we can still, with your system, accumulate that data and report it on the financials.
So I don't know if you'll recall, but I think that this is somewhat representative of what you're asking me, albeit the line items can be whatever you want them to be. So here we have some expenses from the financials here, and here we have the different census information. And so we're doing that cost per different type of information there. So these are very configurable reports, so we can create that in as much summary or detail as we want.
Okay.
And so, Gary, I don't know if that's kind of, if this is the direction that you're talking about here.
Yes, that's exactly the direction. Unfortunately, I missed the first 7 minutes of the presentation, so.
Okay.
I might have covered it. So, yeah, that works fine for me.
Okay, great.
All right. If there's any other questions, again, feel free to type a question in the question box. Use the hand raise function. We could unmute your line and just leave this open for another moment here. All right. Well, if we have no additional questions, again, I'd like to thank everybody for your time, and hopefully this was valuable use of everybody's time. We will be sending a copy of this recording out to everybody. And, of course, if there are any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we'll go ahead and close the meeting, and thank you, everyone, again, for your time.